100 years ago, tragedy struck the RMS Titanic, as over 1,500 innocent men, women, and children lost their lives. 85 years later, tragedy once again struck this horrific event with the release of The Legend of the Titanic, an animated movie that was the worst thing to come out of Italy since Mussolini. Not only was it rife with lackluster animation, bad dialogue backed by even worse voice acting, and packed with even more cliches than the James Cameron film, but they somehow turned this cautionary tale about the dangers of man's pride and hubris into a piece of anti-whaling propaganda.
You said before that evil man, Everard Maltravers, was lost at sea. That means nobody's hunting the whales any longer.
Unfortunately, no, children. There'll always be another Everard Maltravers. Their names may change, but their evil lives on, and the whales are still hunted.
And worse even still, nobody dies!
There's room for everyone!
How do you get away with that? How do you take this real-life story where over 1,500 people die, and then you rework it so that in the end nobody dies? Hell, even the few animal characters that do die just end up being fine by the end of the movie with no explanation as to why. But what could possibly be worse than a movie that spits in the collective faces of everyone who died on the Titanic? It has a sequel. And even worse still, they apparently named the sequel to a true event after a fictional Mickey Mouse-faced octopus named Tentacles. I'm just gonna let that sink in with you for a moment.
I say, let's get going! Well, now I can wear this hat with honor.
Anyway, our story begins apparently tre anni dopo from the events of the last movie, where we see the kind of deep-sea diving equipment that I'm sure was completely feasible in the year 1915. Inside, we see our leads from the last film, Don Juan, Elizabeth, their dog Smile, and their mouse friends, Ronnie and Top Connors. For those of you who haven't seen The Legend of the Titanic, Top Connors was telling the story of the movie to his grandchildren via flashback. Remember this! And why exactly are these characters doing this? To search for the wreckage of the Titanic. Why are they searching for the Titanic? That's right, never explain. I do love it when a movie's characters are so clearly motivated. By the way, out of all of our main cast here, the only character whose voice hasn't changed between films is Elizabeth.
I hate to be a spoilsport, but I would like to draw to your attention the fact that she's a woman and you're a mouse.
You're right, sharks!
Well, there's one thing I'm not, and that's a racist.
It seems to me that we've come to a stop. Don't you think so too?
You're right on that, my friend. Sometimes I just lose sight of the fact that not all creatures are created equal.
Well, okay, you got a point, but I still don't like them.
Beautiful girl. Over there. Go to her, Smiley.
Calm down, Smile. Even cats eat mice.
Oh yeah? If you say so.
But things start taking a turn for the fortunate as the gang of sharks from the last movie, you heard me, begin to zero in on the submersible. We then dissolve to a crappy PS1 cutscene, where we meet what passes for the main villain for this movie. A rapping shark named Razor Teeth, who's wearing a captain's uniform.
Yo, 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 look at my teeth. They're so sharp and white and neat. They bring on fear and even some terror. Once they shed, I make no error. With no doubt, and needless to say, the feast is taken with the prey. With no doubt, and needless to say, the feast is taken with the prey.
Oh, you, there's no one me now than you. Oh, you, there's no one me now than you.
You know, say what you will about the rapping dog from Titanic The Legend Goes On, at least that rap number kind of makes sense. First of all, he actually has an audience that he could sing to, and secondly, seeing as how they're on the maiden voyage of the most beautiful ship ever built, he could easily make the argument that it is, in fact, party time.
Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine 'cause it's party time. Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine 'cause it's party time.
Not only is this rapping shark also wearing clothes that make no sense and is singing a musical genre that won't be developed for several decades, but who is he singing to? Himself? The clams who have obviously been rehearsing with him for who knows how long? And also, the animation in this movie sucks worse than the other two animated Titanic movies. Oh my god, I live in a world where I can actually say the other two animated Titanic movies. I need a drink. Back to our main characters. who are taking their predicament inexplicably well.
Absolutely. There is something definitely wrong here, and we're in trouble. Trust me, it's really big.
We're gonna get eaten alive by sharks and crushed to death by freezing water, and it's really great! So the sharks bite through the support cable and our heroes sink to their watery doom. His mission accomplished, Razor Teeth returns to his lair and, get this, uses a series of interlinked clams and jellyfish to send an email to his human accomplice, Baron Vandertilt.
To the Right Honorable Baron Vandertilt.
Let's try to count all the ways in how stupid this is, shall we? 1. In this movie's prequel, it's established that our heroine, Elizabeth, can talk to dolphins thanks to her tears being caught in a net of magical moonbeams. I know, just work with me here. For Razor Teeth to be in cahoots with any human, did they need to have a good cry over the North Atlantic themselves? 2. How do fish learn to read, write, and translate English into electronic signals and vice versa? 3. In a message that begins with, "To the Right Honorable Baron Vandertilt," why are the letters O, I, and A the first to be typed? 4. How the hell do a bunch of jellyfish tied together transmit anything? 5. Baron Vandertilt is nothing but the villain from the last movie, but with different colored hair. Look, he's even got the same stupid goon from before. Last time he saw them, they were lost at sea and presumed dead. What are they doing here? Did they survive by eating Elizabeth's wicked stepmother or something? 6. We're only 13 minutes in, and this movie's just gonna get stupider. Speaking of stupid, here comes our title character, Tentacles.
Adi, there are human beings inside it. They've all passed out.
What?
Adi, there are human beings inside it. They've all passed out.
You can't be serious! Not only did they make a crappy animated movie about one of the worst disasters in maritime history, not only did they make an even crappier sequel, and not only did they name that crappier sequel after a secondary character who has no business even being here in the first place, but they also don't even give that title character the same name as what his own movie is named for!
Adi, there are human beings inside it.
Are they trying to make this movie this stupid? They can't be this inept by accident! Anyway, not Tentacles notices his friends inside, and is having quite a bit of trouble pulling them free considering how he's supposed to be strong enough to throw an iceberg at the Titanic! But who should show up to help but the demon spawn of He-Man and My Little Pony?
Stop that, Adi! What you're doing is useless!
Hundreds of innocent lives lost.
We'll give them breathing apparatus and take them to Atlantis.
Man spitting in the face of God and God spitting back.
I swear, if something bad happens to my friends, I'll rip every tooth out of that shark and I'll make them into the most beautiful necklace you've ever seen.
This movie is giving me brain cancer. And the brain cancer has nausea. So the Atlanteans save our heroes by spray painting bubbles around their heads, and they take them to Atlantis.
Huh? Hey, what's happening?
Don't worry.
Help! I'm dead! Come help me! Help me! This isn't happening! No, I'm dead! And you're taking me to doggy hell, and none of this is fair at all! Why is this happening to me? I've always been good. Yeah, I chased cats, and when I was a puppy, I stole some nice juicy steak, but that isn't a good enough reason for this!
You human beings, you have had genocide, war against people of different creeds, colors, religions, and I stole a biscuit? Is that a crime? People of the world!
Where are they taking them?
Right where you're going. To the hospital, where the doctors will give you a special treatment.
What? You must be joking. I'm not undergoing any treatment. No, absolutely not. Out of the question. Forget it.
It's nothing dangerous.
Yes, listen to the diagnosis of Nurse Dallas Cheerleader.
Everyone in Atlantis has had it. It'll help you breathe when you're in the water.
All right. But are you sure there won't be any nasty surprises?
And we awkwardly cut to the next scene before Smile's question is answered. Here's to many more nasty surprises.
They've arrived safe and sound and they're taking the treatments.
Oh, amazing! This is such great news! At last, we've got a reason to party! I'll organize the most breathtaking party yet. Gosh, where is it? Oh, where can it have got to? Fabulous! Fabuloso! I'm gonna knock your socks off! I'll organize the best party there's been around here in the last 300 years! I'll take what I need. Here. Oh, now I'm ready. Oh, this'll be wonderful. I look fabulous.
What the hell does this have to do with the Titanic? No, never mind how this has absolutely nothing to do with the Titanic. Let's try answering the question of where the crap this character even came from in the first place. A silver, jack-in-the-box fish with a gay lisp and likes playing dress-up? What were these animators snorting to come up with this thing?
With that outfit, you'll be the perfect ambassador. I'm sure you'll do us proud.
I'm sure I will too. I'm off!
Your Highness, if you carry on encouraging him like this, Pimgo will become so vain he'll end up being totally unbearable.
End up? He's been beyond unbearable from the first rate that we saw him! Meanwhile, at the hospital, Don Juan, Elizabeth, and the others prepare for life in Atlantis.
To be able to complete the treatment, you have to drink the elixir before you visit the city. Ah, here it is now.
Of course. Keep calm. If they wanted to harm us, they wouldn't have saved us. And this elixir is such a pretty color. Come on, drink.
And you know what else has a pretty color? Windex. So they take a little tour around the city, which looks no more mystical than a slightly futuristic shopping mall.
How do you like it?
This is such a great place.
It's like a dream.
It's a nightmare.
We are expected by His Excellency Pingo, Counselor to His Majesty. He would like to speak to the new arrivals.
Huh? I don't believe it. Aren't those toys?
No, those are people.
Yes, they are. You have no idea how many toys we have rescued. Toys that have gone overboard during their crossing.
Who the hell owns 6-foot toy soldiers? How do you lose 6-foot toy soldiers?
The king says everything lives, moves, and thinks, even if it seems impossible at times.
Ugh. You know what? As stupid as it was, at least the whole magical moonbeams thing from the last movie was kind of an okay explanation as to how Elizabeth can find herself talking to dolphins. Everything lives, moves, and thinks. Not only is that just stupid, it's incredibly lazy. Really, so everything moves, lives, and thinks, huh? What, do houses move, live, and think too? That's just... Moving on, then. They go inside, where they see even more toys just meandering around.
Allow me to introduce myself and welcome you here. I'm Pingo. As the king's ambassador, I have the honor and pleasure of welcoming you to his kingdom.
Well, at least this explains how Atlantis has remained hidden all these years. You throw this thing at the world and diplomatic relations come to a screeching halt.
I now officially declare you new inhabitants of Atlantis! I hope you will appreciate this very special, very personal welcome I organized myself.
Welcome to Atlantis, where everything's a dream. And it's a special place. We have a king and have a queen. Here is a surprise. Atlantis is the only place where you always stay awake.
The water is fresh, you can swim around at the fish hotel. It's a real cool sound. Coming to my shop, a dozen cost her a dime. Every single day, it's always party time. Bubble, bubble, darling, trouble don't mean a thing. We can surf all day while the dolphins sing.
Look how much fun everyone is having.
I'm not having fun. Are any of you folks at home having fun? Show of hands!
Under the stars.
thing I've got to tell you. Up there, you can't go back.
Well, I hope you will accept my apologies and those of the Queen for the lack of tact displayed by our counselor when he gave you the news.
Can you apologize for his entire existence? Because that is what you need to apologize for. But yes, apparently Don Juan and Elizabeth are just fine with how they're being kept prisoner in this Technicolor madhouse, and Smile and the mice are busy wandering aimlessly through the city.
I'll see you later.
Smile ditches the mice so he can grab some local tail, and the mice are met by a pirate mouse and a bad Asian stereotype mouse.
You're Lolly, right?
Connors and Ronnie follow them to their secret lair on the sound reasoning of why the hell not, and their means of getting there is completely original and not ripped off from any other movie whatsoever.
I get such a son.
While that's going on, the movie decides to get awkward as we cut to Smile and this lady dog who is never given a name or any dialogue. So you know it's true love, right? Huh. That is very interesting. For this movie to exist at all, there would have to be at least some kind of rudimentary fan base for The Legend of the Titanic. And as sick and disturbing as that fan base no doubt is, I would have really expected them to apply Rule 34 to this particular scene to show us how far it's actually went. And actually, I can't find a single Rule 34 image that applies to this scene. Good for you, fanbase. My faith in humanity isn't entirely shot. Mr. Rat's wild ride finally comes to a stop, and they disembark on an open porthole.
I don't want to get in. I'm scared. I don't know how to swim.
You don't need to know how to swim.
So, when you say you don't have to swim, you actually mean that swimming is the only way of getting to where you have to go? There's bad translation, and then there's just being stupid. And why can't you use one of those little boat things?
Hello?
What's the password?
Let me in, you idiot.
Correct.
They come across a group of rats who want to leave Atlantis, who are naturally discussing this while already outside of Atlantis. What's stopping them from just packing up their stuff and leaving?
Let's take a huge stash of the elixir of life with us, and thanks to the elixir, we'll be able to conquer the world and rule over everyone!
Of course!
So, how exactly does one conquer the world with only an elixir that makes them breathe underwater? I'm waiting!
And we'll offer that annoying little pink octopus as a present to Razor Teeth!
Wait, what?
And we'll offer that annoying little pink octopus as a present to Razor Teeth!
My god! Thank you for actually giving me a character that I can root for in this movie!
Maybe this is a joke.
No, I don't think so.
No, it's a joke, alright, and it's on everyone who's watching this crap.
Well, it could be. Especially to scare the new arrivals.
No.
So they go tell King Ringwraith and the Christmas tree skirt about the rats and their insurrection.
But if they dismantle me with a screwdriver, I'll die, won't I?
No one mentioned anything about dismantling you with a screwdriver. Although it is a good idea, if you'll excuse me.
No one will hurt you. They'll have to have a screwdriver, and down here in Atlantis, there are no screwdrivers. They've all been banned.
Huh?
no screwdrivers. They've all been banned.
A technologically advanced civilization where screwdrivers are banned? Isn't that like a car company that doesn't believe in the wheel?
Listen to me carefully. I've decided that you'll help those rebels in every way possible. Ronnie and Top Connors will have to gain the trust of the rebels' leader and do everything they tell them to, even if it means stealing the elixir of life. No arguments. Do you understand?
Not in the slightest. What does aiding the rebels get you exactly?
We must prepare for battle.
All we have to do is win.
Oh! All we have to do is win! And here I was thinking that losing would be the superior strategy. Thanks, Patton! And if going into battle was what you're planning to do, why are you trying to bring down the rebellion from the inside with Connors and Ronnie? This problem could be solved just by dropping a big rock on them.
And thanks to the elixir, we'll be able to conquer the world!
So they swap out the elixir of life for a dummy vial for the rats to steal.
How did he do that? He must be a magician.
No, not at all. You've got it wrong. He's not a magician. He's much more than that.
Is he Jesus? So the trap is set, and the rats make their move.
Until 200 years ago, this was like a fortress. But as no one was interested in the spring, all the guards were removed.
Oh, no, of course not. Obviously, nobody would ever be interested in something called the Elixir of Life, which somehow grants people the ability to take over the world. Of course nobody would ever want something like that!
Stealing the elixir, were we?
Pingo and Ronnie swap out the vials, which they couldn't do before for some reason, and the rats make their escape with the vial of water.
And what shall we do now, Your Majesty?
We'll follow them. We'll fight them.
No, you sit back, do nothing, let the rats escape with their elixir of life, and laugh in their faces when they realize that it's only water, and all of their plans have backfired on them. Why are you pursuing them for stealing a red herring that you gave them?
Smile, you seem to be a brave fellow. Do you want to be part of the action as well?
Of course I do. I've got unfinished business with a certain little kung fu rat, and I'd really like to get even with him.
This dialogue is repetitive, and it's redundant, too.
Hey, Adi!
I'm sorry, but I refuse to get over this. How do you name a movie after a character, and then give that character a completely different name? And what the crap kind of a name is Audie, anyway? Before the Atlanteans can launch their pointless attack, Razorteeth sends another message to Vandertilts to inform him of the situation. And because characters' voices changing in between movies wasn't silly enough, this character's voice changed in the middle of the movie.
Everything's ready, Chief. We're ready to send.
Yes, whenever you want, sir. We've got a connection.
What are you rambling on about? Mermen, mermaids, rats from Atlantis? What are you writing about, Jeffrey? Have you been drinking by any chance? Well?
Talking sharks and jellyfish email I can buy, but Atlantis? Don't be silly.
At least the request for help is clear. And it's also perfectly clear that the risk of losing the treasure is very high. Give the order to launch the mini-submarine so we can help the rats and sharks in the battle against the mermen and mermaids.
So not only does this guy have mini-subs, but he's also ready to launch them at the drop of a hat, even if the reasons for dropping that hat are completely ridiculous. So the rats and sharks are being gunned down by what? They gave the dog a laser gun? Why did they give the dog a laser gun?
Watch what you're doing, Smile. His Majesty gave the order to be careful and not to hit anyone.
How about you handle the laser gun? Aren't you the freaking guard of Atlantis or something? Why did you give the dog the laser gun while you are stuck with that pitchfork thing? Oh wait, those trident things are laser guns? That makes it even more nonsensical to give the dog a gun since you've already got all the firepower you need.
This isn't going well.
And speaking of things that don't make sense, let's throw in some ground troops just for the hell of it. The sharks and the rats are retreating, men. We need reinforcements. Send the toy division!
Little one, I appreciate your effort,
But this is no place for someone like you. I'm called Brumali, Your Majesty, but I'm not a little girl. I'm the commander of the mountain artillery troops. I'm dolled up like this because I fell into the hands of a little girl who thought she'd put a wig on me when she saw me with this skirt on. You get it? The colors of my glorious Scottish regiment were changed for a frilly girl's skirt. It's awful. I can't bear it. I'm the best artilleryman in the army. I have to banish this curse that's haunting me and regain my identity.
Just wash the makeup off, you stupid toy! You're underwater! This shouldn't be that hard! And why are you even wearing that wig if you can just take it off at any time? They fire more lasers and a couple of cannonballs, and this somehow destroys the subs without harming their occupants in the slightest.
You know what's going on? What are we doing here? How did we get in the water?
I don't know, sir.
Ah, apparently those were amnesia rays too. Any chance you can shoot me with some of that so I don't have to remember this stupid thing? So they open fire on Vandertilt's ship, which survives the barrage somehow, and Vandertilt and Jeffrey have no idea what they're doing here.
Jeffrey, tell me, what was happening?
Let's see. Oh, yes, I was serving your dinner, your lordship, but that's it.
Well, don't be ridiculous. I can see that. I mean, now listen to me, Jeffrey. What were we doing here in this boat in the middle of the sea?
Yes, well, do you think this is a cruise, maybe? Do you need to get some rest, your lordship?
Yes, of course. I'm tired. Jeffrey, just because we're on holiday doesn't mean you can dress any way you like to. One does have standards, you know.
Ironic? Meanwhile, the sharks are quickly defeated. Smile zaps the Kung Fu rat some more.
Smile, you son of a...
And the Atlanteans are called back to let the rats make a clean getaway.
I don't understand why we've let them go back up to the surface.
Yeah, they'll tell everyone about the existence of Atlantis.
Who are they gonna tell?
Don't worry. It's all right. There's no danger.
There was no danger before you decided to engage your soldiers in the war with the sharks, you idiot! Elsewhere, the rats are reveling in the victory of their escape.
We'll be able to take over every city, town, and village in the world! Yeah!
Maybe you should focus on conquering one city before you decided to take over the world. Being defeated by the Rainbow Bright Brigade and a dog with an amnesia ray isn't doing a lot for your reputation as conquerors of the world. I love the look on this older rat's face. Not even he is buying this bullcrap. But his dissent isn't enough to keep anyone from being brain-dead idiots, as they test the elixir of life on him to see if he doesn't drown. In case there are those of you who haven't been paying attention, God knows the writers weren't, they've been underwater this whole movie and they've been fine! The future rulers of the world, ladies and gentlemen! Submit to their idiocy now! Resistance is futile! Oh, and look, he's still drowning. This movie about Atlanteans, talking toys, and an imbecilic octopus isn't making any sense.
We've won! We've won! We're the best! We're the best! Come on, Screwy!
What?! When did he befriend a screwdriver? How could he have befriended a screwdriver in a civilization where they've been banned? Who makes screwdrivers with little arms and facial features? What is the point of shoehorning this thing in here at the very last second?
Mission number 2!
The counselors have suggested that the Queen and I should reward your efforts.
Yay! What do we get? What do we get?
Cheese for everyone!
As soon as it's ready, you'll find out.
Thank you.
And it turns out that reward is... really? They rebuilt the Titanic and retrofitted it with Atlantean tech? You remember that from the history books, kids? Because that actually happened!
We finished, Your Excellency. Now it's down to you to carry it.
Thank you, John Lovitz. So now that the Titanic has been rebuilt... Gah!
His Majesty asked me to come and help you take the Titanic to the Forgotten Island.
Oh! Let's have a nightmare, a nightmare, a nightmare. Let's have a nightmare at the bottom of the sea! I mean, really? How much more stupid is this movie gonna pile on us at the last second? The movie's over! The sharks are gone, Vandertilt's been defeated, the rats have collapsed, There's nothing left to tell! Why is this still going on?! Wait a minute. Clouds? Is this heaven? Oh my god, I think it is! This movie may have killed me, but I don't care! It's over! You can't hurt me anymore! Oh, come on! Where the hell are we now?!
Here is the reward we promised you. This island is now yours, and this will be your new home. This is a secret island, unreachable by anyone, and here you will live happily ever after.
We could reward you just as easily by taking you back to New York, but have fun being marooned!
But we'll never see our friends from Atlantis again.
What about your friends from back home? Your gypsy clan, Elizabeth's family? Your wedding was pretty packed at the end of the last movie. Shouldn't they be higher on your list of priorities than a gay toy fish, that mutant offspring of a stingray and a ferret and whatever the crap that thing is?
Come with me.
Let's go. Okay.
So they follow him inside and, okay, seriously? You couldn't even make sure the Titanic was completely drained before bringing it back to the surface? This is like taking the bodies away from a murder scene, but not bothering to clean up the bloodstains. Freaking tactless, man! Come on! Oh great, cast reunion downstairs. How easy would it be to electrocute everyone down here, do you suppose?
This isn't a mirror.
You're right, it's a window.
It's a special screen, which allows you to see everything that's going on in the world.
Could you tell us how it works, then?
No, I'm going to spend millions of Atlantean dollars creating this thing on top of the millions that I already spent to rebuild the most expensive ship ever made, and then dick around with you by telling you of its incredible power and then not show you how it works. Bye!
You just have to think very hard about who or what you want to see, and the mirror will show you.
Impossible!
Who did that?
Oh, excuse me for wanting to watch something that's actually worth watching. Oh, but let's just ignore the super cool action movie that doesn't have to rely on its audience being complete idiots. Let's go watch what Tom Connors wants to see.
I wanted to know what had happened to the Emperor and all of his subjects.
Oh yes, so much more interesting than seeing the Hulk thrash Loki around like a rag doll. And what did happen to the Emperor and his subjects? Apparently they all swam thousands of miles through the ocean and somehow ended up in an insane asylum. I could point out how in the real world there's a bit of a difference between being mentally ill and incredibly stupid, but these filmmakers do too good a job of demonstrating how they're one and the same.
Doctor, you must believe me. I'm not mad. I'm not like them. Let me go. Let me go. I must return to Atlantis and take the real elixir of life. I was betrayed. Someone replaced the flask! Doctor, if you let me go, you'll become the Emperor's personal doctor. Trust me! Don't go! I'm telling you the truth!
He's got a really big personality, but unfortunately there's no hope for him. He's as mad as a hatter. I'm afraid we'll have to keep him in here forever.
Oh, but here's a silly face to tell us that this fate worse than death is okay, kids!
Let the dancing commence!
One more night to love you again. One more time to relive my dreams. We will meet again. Just wait and see. Heaven knows that you'll always be the true love of my life, the bright prince of all my dreams. What I feel for you is beyond all the sea. When I have you so near me, I can't believe I feel complete. You're all I need.
Later, Don Juan and Elizabeth kiss in front of the sunset. And the movie just kind of gives up on itself and the credits roll before we see everyone's final resolutions. Look at this, the editor was so lazy he didn't even bother adding the names of the English-speaking voice actors. What? Are you kidding me? Now the movie's just mocking itself by making its own ending credits look like some stupid Saturday morning cartoon. The only thing missing from this is the Fox Kids logo in the corner. This movie is a travesty! The animation is awful, the voice acting was beyond phoned in, the writing sounds like it was based on a game of Mad Libs, it's an insult to cinema, and worst of all, it's a giant slap in the face for everyone who died on the Titanic. But you know what? We can bitch and moan about this movie for as long as we want, and believe me, the movie gives us a lot to work with. But actually, this may have the best ending in any movie ever. Think about this for a minute. The first movie is being told in flashback from the vantage point of one of the main characters in New York. This movie, however, ends with that character being marooned on an island for the rest of his life. That means that he never got to go home to New York, which means that he never had the chance to sire any grandchildren and tell the events of the first movie. Logically, the legend of the Titanic now no longer exists. And if the legend of the Titanic no longer exists, that means that it couldn't have possibly spawned its sequel, Tentacolino. So basically, this movie ends in such a way that it completely wipes both itself and its predecessor completely out of existence. What was I talking about? I think it was bad. It was one of the most insulting things that I've ever seen. I think I need some rest. I'll see you guys later.
You know there's something you should know, so I'm gonna tell you so. Don't sweat it, forget it, enjoy the show. Working all day, now it's time to unwind. Kick back, relax, take a load off your mind. I'll be busting the moves and I'll be busting the rhymes. We'll be busting up laughing cause it's party time. Well, just leave your troubles at the door, leave your worries behind. Leave the rest up to me, you're gonna like what you find. I'll be busting the moves and I'll be busting the rhymes. We'll be busting up laughing cause it's party time. Party time, it's party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. Party time, party time. Everybody's feeling fine cause it's party time. It's party time.